Sure.
Good evening. There we go. Welcome to Traveling Mollies. I'm Al DeGenova.
I'm Nina Corwin. And here we are again with episode 723 of Traveling Mollies. I'm making that up. I'm pulling that up out of...
Maybe we should count one of these days how many there were over the last almost 20 years. So.
It is that too. So, wise words, Al.
No wise words tonight. We will have our open mic as always. I'll start out, then Nina will read. We wanted to just do a little call out to before we talk about our features. Kurt Heinz, who's been with us for the last almost 2 years as our technical person for our virtual readings, and we want to thank him very sincerely for all his help. And he's kind of passed the baton to Bill Harrison, who's here tonight helping us out. So.
And hopefully we won't scare him off in any sort of way. So our feature tonight is Darius Simpson, and I'm really looking forward to hearing him. I did get a last minute call or email from Virginia's partner, who said that there's a health emergency going on, and so she won't be with us. But stay tuned, because as long as everything's okay, she will be back among us. Well, Bill was saying something with his hands. Did you understand it?
I didn't see it.
Okay, so we usually start with a poem from each of us. Al, do you want to get us going?
I will do that. I'm going to read a poem. It's an ekphrastic poem, and I haven't written that many ekphrastic poems, but it's called an Immersive Van Gogh exhibit, and it's a multimedia presentation of Van Gogh's work. And some people thought it might be gimmicky, and I wasn't sure, but I went to it and I was really pretty blown away by it. So I was moved to write a little poem. It's kind of state-of-the-art multimedia and animation and everything else that goes along with it. Plus it's huge and in a big room with multiple, projectors. It's really, I enjoyed it a lot. I would highly recommend it. Anyway, so this is the poem that I wrote after being there. It's called Seeing Beyond, the Immersive Van Gogh exhibit. Step through the black curtain into the absinthe-scented mind, the imagining of an imagination to see as the artist saw. A murder of crows cawing, black wings thrashing out of a field of golden wheat. Yellows more yellow than sunlight, blues more blue than irises blooming before his eyes. The Rhone shimmering in starlight, stars alive with a god's energy, breathing a white-yellow breath. Midnight lit by candlelight, smoke rising through clouds, moving in a wind, the same wind that chills me today. Who's to know madness or hallucination or brushstrokes, but for the stillness on canvas, that is no stillness. The green fairy strokes Vincent's forehead as he sleeps in a bed sketched before my eyes. I wrap a sheet of sunflowers around me. This seeing, his or mine, through tears of sugar and water, through time and loneliness, and here I am alone at my writing table within green walls, pine trees outside my window, a green singing bowl humming Vincent's Song of Songs and the infinite ache. So, anyway, well, thank you. Thank you.
That's lovely. And it's inspired me to read another ekphrastic poem. This was actually drawn from a piece that actually it was from an exhibit of at the Mexican Fine Arts Center Museum, but also a piece of art that I bought that was collage and just identity issues. A painting uncertain of its name, my unquenchable hope comes laden with shrouded lineage, backside bearing the faded tape of a tag that didn't stick. It believes it was born to Spanish radicals forbidden to speak their native tongue, bifurcated memories of bullfights and psychedelic orgies mingle, and psychedelic orgies mingle in botched unconscious. The painting wants to be a love poem, but its brain is crawling with bees. In it, a halved mannequin grinds stars in the summer house, doling out promises to the lumpen proletariat. In it, a force-fed cross from a cardinal's fist, the painting looks for itself. In store windows, newspaper clippings a match, unlit. When it dreams, its dreams are mother of pearl smuggled ivory. It is a painting where the dead come for coffee, receptacle for the wrecked umbrella, broken jaw, feral cat. In it, a rubber key, a lock of hair. I am smitten. For a song, the painting agrees to come home with me. I set my watch by its leaky heart, its honeycomb complexion. Celebrate its unframed existence. The veins of the painting, once pale, now glow. I call it bone picker's child, larder for the lost and crumpled found, my bifurcated wound. Sing, you'd be so nice to come home to as the sun sets. My unquenchable hope hums along as I nail it to the wall. All right, then. Thanks, Lenny. It's good to see your face. Lenny's going to be one of our features at some point in the not too distant future. So let's see where we should start. How about if we start with Pablo Oravalo, and I'm gonna suggest that we ask people to do 5 minutes, but because we don't have Virginia with us, feel free to do 6 or 7. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And so my first poem that I'm going to read for you guys is now just been inspired by Patricia and her midnight trip to go see some meteorites. So it's called The Hunt. The Hunt. Across the northern sky, beneath the handle of the Little Dipper, Ursa Minor, a bear cub, a cut of light divides a moment, then is gone, then remains. Its after image a fading scar against the insistent blue-black. Distant traffic across the east-west interstate fades into the hum of power lines, which itself fades, and the quiet fills your mouth. A scrap of interstellar debris incinerated by the upper atmosphere, memorialized by synaptic circuits retracing their steps. Look back, past the field of switchgrass, the lone porch light on the rehab farmhouse, the silhouetted oaks, hickories edging the Vermilion River, straight into the dark. Let your eyes adjust, then look up at no one part of the sky, but at the trembling vast. Slowly your gaze ripples the light, the air heavy with sumac, a dart in your periphery, compelled by gravity to burn. Thank you. So that was from the Pierce-Eyed Meteor Shower in Illinois when I went to go see that by Stark Rock. So she reminded me of that. And this one's from that area too. It's called Christian County, Illinois. In mid-sentence, like a pregnant sow in another mud and mire-laden trench, your hay-stuffed midland rests. In mid-crossing, a locomotive humming through a hymn on Sunday morning. This is west of Eden. Vacant fields, vacant lots, and the elms holding back the wind. Across the river, along the same tracks, through a field of pinwheel turbines, a factory erupting steadily through the night, and the bungalows under its shadow foreclosed, forsaken, and still a Walmart opens. The train whistle cuts clear, the moon abandons its post, and the cold digs into the bones of each who enter to take their place along the line. Thank you. And here's my my last one for you, since it is the holiday season. So, it's called Redux after Psalm 14. I don't know if you like it. And the clever toy with the notion that the nothing they know is the nothing that is, but a greater nothing, a metallic hunger. The steel trap bangs, gnawing the tendon, the bone, yet a wire of iniquity runs through the house, lights up the room, shuttles the weave of cheap clothes, curls onto a spoon and into your belly. You scoff and you spit at the wicked for what they have done, but the earth is your trough, and you swallow their labor like bread. The germ spills from your mouth. You bottle their water and drink them to drought. The comfortable world, subsidized by suffering, awakens refreshed and absolved in the great hosanna of forgetting all about it.
Oh, thank you, Pablo. Very nice. Glad to see you here tonight. So we'll keep moving with our open mic. Next, I'd like to ask Noelle Jones to read for us.
Hello, everyone. It's been a long time since I've come to a poetry reading, so I'm excited, and I've never done this in Zoom, so I'll be reading on the screen. I assume that's what everyone's doing. And all of those poems were lovely. I'm really feeling inspired. I want to run off and go write. So I'll start with a piece called Acoustics of an Admirable Attempt. There are sacred moments I cup in my hands, winged things fluttering at the cracks between my fingers. I should let them go, but I'm not ready to begin, forgetting how they feel against my skin. Once I held you in the marble cathedral of a hotel shower, praying into your long wet hair until your voice escaped and we sang together in a round. Now you are a song stuck in my head. You were always a mirage of sorts. At home in your city and me in mine, I watched the lights flicker under the red smear of sunset, listening to your voice vibrate low across the silver web we stretched from Chicago to Kansas City like a hammock, until one day something jounced, our net, a muted struggle. Then all vibration ceased. Each of us left hanging from a silver thread in the moonlight. This one is called Barabbas. Barabbas, even your cross is tired of this parade. You cannot bring him back, the other sun, the golden one. On that summit, the sun orbited you both. People called your name. Gravity did the rest. Head cocked back, you scan for stars, drag your anchor deep, a rudder uphill. The dirt is steep, throws you back every time. Spare your mother the details. Tell her a bedtime story until her ghost fades, then put down the splintered wood of her voice. Your eyes trace that ridge on the horizon through the half-open window where she stands, sentinel, folding and refolding a crib out of tissue. She is a paperweight. You flutter at every breeze. You cannot help her. She cannot keep you from returning to that peak, stretching like a kite across that frame. And I'll end with this one, which is called She Tells Stories. She tells stories like a pirate poised on the prow, committing her wake to memory, the ever-fading map of all she's seen. Arg, she says, what if I run out of stories? She thinks she's starting to lose her balance because as a girl, she liked to tap her way along the sidewalk with an outstretched cane, eyes closed, mind mapping trees and signposts, navigating the rustle of leaves swept aside, the wet smell of mulch, the bark of the dog in a neighbor's yard, just to know what it would be like, to want to touch the world more out of need than desire. She likes to turn the lights off, sits up in bed and gently shoves off into the night, pausing, pushing forward again in a slow pulse through her own cloud of ink, trailing a finger along invisible walls, charting a course in cool black space until her soles contact the smooth tiles of an oddly pristine ocean floor, another tale to tell. On her return, each pause, each light touch, a knob here, a ledge there, traces the way back to her sunken treasure.
Well, I hope you take that inspiration, whatever inspiration you're getting from us tonight, and produce more beautiful work, and vice versa for the rest of you. There just aren't the same number of opportunities to listen to poetry and get this kind of inspiration. That's why I'm so glad we're able to do this. I don't know what other people do, but I like to be on gallery view, particularly for this point of the evening, because you might see people doing things like that, smiling and nodding appreciatively, or hopefully laughing in the right parts of the poem as opposed to the wrong ones, moving right along. Patty Mcmillan, good to see you this month.
Hey, good to be here this month. Thank you. Okay, so with that invitation and all of this inspiration, I'm going to read three. First one's an older one, and Pablo doesn't know this, but my family, my dad is from Christian County, Illinois, and I've spent a good deal of time there. So this poem is called Illinois. It was published in an anthology called Where We Live, Illinois Poets in 2003. Illinois. Another 10, 15, 200 miles down the highway, there'll be something to see. The Dixie Buffet Cafe, Mother Jones' grave. But here where the two roads cross, there's not so much as a red-winged blackbird. Nothing but static on the radio. Sermons gave way an hour back to tractors, road noise. Everything's square out here, vast, wakeless lake of soybean acreage, straight corn rows, highway, train tracks, and fence line. Here and there, a slash of power lines looped woo, woo, woo between steel donkeys and straw hats. And flat. Look past somebody's grandma's house, past the prison, and 15 miles past that's the horizon. Out here, everything's orderly, like it should be everywhere. Orange jumpsuited men pack up the trash in big black bags, leave them spaced on the roadside, bing, bing, bing. A place like this, space measured by telephone poles, a person might say stasis, might say death, or might say home, because there's something here no one can take away. These poles standing upright as uncles after dinner, straight as country ants, tanned arms outstretched in prayer. Thanks. And now I have two new ones. First one is one of those ones that doesn't really have a title. It runs into the rest. While you were crying, while you were curling your hair or arguing or making love, while you were walking your dog, dressing your salad, washing your pajamas, while you were watching the riots on television, waiting in line at the Benton Harbor DMV, adapting to new technology, defending yourself in divorce court, while you were sleeping, tripping on mushrooms, driving your car southbound, driving northbound on Lakeshore Drive with the windows open, with the windows closed, history kept happening. You don't think you changed so much as everyone else did. In fact, you fought for the integrity of your brain, your body. You shut your eyes against the temporary insanity of others, did your best to block out trauma, to avoid repetition of trauma. But while you did, 30 years passed, then 40 years, then 50. Ice shelves calved, sea ice melted, and history kept happening. And last, thank you, this is, well, I'm calling it an homage to Catan and Fuentes Varène's opera Florencia en el Amazonas, which was itself inspired by the writings of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It was just produced in Chicago. It may still be in production at Lyric. And I just found it so amazing that I started writing this poem on my phone during intermission. So the poem is called My Magical Realist. Always and every time you've appeared with your list of questions, a butterfly with a man's body, and I, a closed bud waiting to be warmed by sunlight, not knowing how to look for you. What was different this time? There at the number 60 bus stop one summer evening as I sat thinking my own thoughts after an outdoor dance concert. You wore your best Panama straw hat, pale linen shirt, and long khaki shorts. Yes, this time you were hard to miss, even for a careless woman like me, by now a blossom in full night bloom. I've thought I was in love before with others, some of them twice, though it's obvious that love itself is literally impossible, that even we are two stars, each floating in its separate galaxy, each with its own center of gravity, and that though so far we haven't disagreed, we'll also never agree exactly. But to think I might have missed you again this time, you who alone bring me the warm inquiry of friendship, the statements of principle long before the heat of passion, you who ride in on meteor showers and stop the planets in mid-sky. That's what she wrote. Thanks.
Thank you, Patty. That was really nice. Good to hear new stuff. So let's move on. Next in the open mic, Bob Chacoin. How you doing?
All right. Good to see everyone. You've allotted us a little extra time today, which I would just use up for some gratitude. First of all, it's just so cool to see Noel Jones with us tonight, because in what seems like another lifetime, I used to attend the National Poetry Slam for a bunch of years from the late 90s to the mid 2000s. And of all the performances I saw, one of the two or three that stands out above all the others is Noel Jones doing a poem called 7 Seconds, I believe in Providence, maybe 20 years ago. So it's just Great to see you pop up after all these years. Secondly, I just want to thank Al and Nina and Kurt and now Bill for keeping this thing going. I miss the in the flesh and the in the atmosphere and the clink ka-ching of the cash register. But this is a really close second as the next thing. Thank you so much for keeping this thing chugging along. And with that, I'll just give you my usual bunch of shorties. The postmodern muggers are not after your phone or computer or your filthy lucre. Instead, they want the poem you've just made up in your head to have it for their own. So you'd better have one ready for them, good sir. They'll take your truth, take your beauty, but they will not take no for an answer. Cuomo. Any on-air talent who was fired from CNN or Fox or Pravda or Al Jazeera should just go quietly, not threaten, not sue, but go off and write poetry and discover how wonderful it is to have no one listen to what you have to say. The dog who was so kind and resourceful to devour my homework long ago and give me an excuse will not eat my poems now that I am old, and I need him once again to leave no evidence. Cartography. If we change the fraught directions of right and left to east and west, we might remove the politics from them. While I and my loyal Boy Scout troop, lost in the woods, look for moss on the trees to find true north, and thus our way out. Wink and blink and a nod, along with Mo, Larry, and Curly, along with the priest, the minister, and the rabbi, keep trying to teach life and death about the rule of threes. Crisis management. Whenever I hear you call out, "All hands on deck," know that I will be there to rearrange the chairs. This dawn wants to fall the way night fell only hours ago, showing us how to kneel. When I do fall, I hope to make the same sound my house keys made, slipping through a hole in my pocket into the snow. Cordelia. The wind is getting desperate, circling the world, altering the jet stream, transforming into tornadoes, raising the size of summer trees into shrieks, trying to find out whatever happened to your breath. Spirit of St. Louis. This morning light barely clears our mound of troubles, our hill of beans left over from last night. The way Lindy's single-engine plane laden with gasoline just made it over the trees at the end of the New Jersey runway. And finally, if I'm still on, it looks like I may have lost you.
You're still
We
there.
got you, Bob.
Okay, yeah, it's not, just lost you. As you know, a couple of weeks ago, we lost Robert Bly, whose thunder was stolen shortly thereafter, alas, by Stephen Sondheim. But it occurred to me the last time I saw Robert Bly read in Chicago, which I think was his last time here, maybe 15 years ago or so, he made a remark during the reading that, which went like this: any poem is good that ends with Jerusalem. And it's right. I mean, you throw Jerusalem at the end of any poem and it makes it better. You can even, try The Wasteland. If it ended Shanti, Shanti, Jerusalem, wouldn't that be a little better? And so this is for Robert Bly. I will not say Godspeed, good sir, or requiescat in pace, or be blessed in lux perpetua, eternal rest. I won't entreat you to send us back a drumbeat from beneath the soil, or a silence in the melting fields, or an old man's grieving howl. Will you be taken into a stranger's home? Have you some new words to thank them, old friend, find a way to let me know when you get to the walls of Jerusalem. Thank you, everyone.
Chico, I really want a book from you. I don't want to have to be the one who puts it together, but for real, at least be part of an anthology of Selesky's proteges. I'm just
The thing about getting really old is that it's too late in life for certain things, and so you needn't spend your
I disagree.
Stop. It is not too late for your first book.
Never.
You have really got to do that. She's right.
Yeah, particularly because the poems are so short, you really do want to read them again. So there.
The writing is easy. The editing is hard. Everyone who's actually written a book will tell you how difficult and time-consuming the editing is. That's why. And I'll leave that to you guys, whose material is better.
All right. So we've got who next? Lenny Montreal. Lenny, let's hear what you got. You're muted.
Hi. Thank you so much for inviting me. Such beautiful poems tonight. It's like going to church. And, it's just a good break from everything that's going on. So thank you so much. I'm going to read from this book that we just released. Well, it was edited by Tim Chapman, and we had a recent reading at the City Lit bookstore. It's called Lit Bop. So I hope you can check it out. And also we'll let everybody know if there's like another call out for submissions. I want to read a couple of poems from this anthology. One is called Things to Remember from This Trip Back Home. So I'm born and raised in the Philippines, and I visit there every now and then. But I've been here in this country for like more than 20 years. So I'm kind of caught in between. So things to remember from this trip back home. You never bring enough clothes to the beach. It matters to look nice, even in this heat where you sweat, stink, take more showers, sweat. Here, flavors explode without apology. Coffee is strong when brewed, but not when in packets of 3-in-1. Dessert is too sweet, too plenty. Don't be scared when someone in your family go into a diabetic shock. Their blood is a quarter sugar. Your teeth will crumble into salt after eating something savory. You'll keep tasting patis long after you've left. Don't forget that here, people love hard. They are always teenagers in search of a high. Love is best when illicit, lechon when de leche. The sun sears your skin till it's crispy. The rains will give you pulmonia. Mosquitoes will fuck you over as if you did them wrong in a previous life. They'll make your nose bleed, your blood platelet count low. You will blow through your money like rain falling through broken roof. It is cheap, so cheap. You can get 3 massages in a week. Treat everybody to a movie. Buy things you will never use. Pasalubos for people who didn't even know you left. Lives too are cheap, so cheap. People are shot for smoking weed. Children from sniffing glue. Just collateral damage. Politicians have billboards the size of a building. No choice but to stare at them when stuck in traffic. And at skin whitening products peddled by mestizas. You will be stuck in traffic more than once. In fact, more often than not. So don't forget to be patient, or maybe rent a personal hotspot. Make sure you're never without Wi-Fi, always connected. Some days, though, the road is clear, not congested. Time matters, is not wasted waiting or looking at billboards or at crowds of passengers stranded at bus stops, waiting for a ride home past midnight. Remember, because the gap steals your memory. You don't recall the bumpy ride on the jeepney at 2 a.m., elbows that crept against your exposed skin, how men molested you with their sleepy heads, their restless arms, their open legs. Don't forget you left your summer clothes behind, languishing in your sister's closet till your next visit. Your mother won't be giving them away to disaster victims. She's not there anymore. Don't be wondering when summer in Chicago comes and you can't find your blue dress. Remember, you live in the in-between. Nothing is ever really lost. So that's one. Let me just, my dog is playing. My dog is playing with something in the back. Hold on. Next one is, it's COVID inspired, I would say. It's called If I Die Tomorrow. If I die tomorrow, please make a fucking fuss. I traveled around the world to be something. You will not cry as if my dying means nothing. Once I thought I was nothing. I thought I could disappear and no one would even know or care. I like disappearing. I made a career out of running away when I first discovered the power of light. If I die tomorrow, I hope it will be easy. I denounce difficulty. Hard work is too hard. Yet I did wash dishes 10 hours a day. I did walk in below zero temperature to get to work, clutching my lungs as if they were going to fall out. I did wait tables and dealt with messy eaters, filled empty condiment bottles with ketchup, soy sauce, and vinegar, smiled until my face hurt for an extra $1 tip. I did take care of children who colored their sky pink and their monsters purple. When I first crossed the border and my savings ran out, I wanted to go back home. There, where people thought I could be something. I wanted to stay a teenager on my friend's porch, drink gin and 7-Up at dusk, play mahjong all night, smoke stolen Marlboros until my lungs hurt and my throat, torn to shreds, pray I do not wake choking in puke and blood-tainted phlegm. Sometimes, the things that keep us alive are the things that kill us. Remember the white guy in Kung Fu found dead in a closet? Amy Winehouse, Whitney Houston. The water was still warm in the tub when I found her. And what about that pretty young thing who inched her way to the brink to catch that perfect selfie? Did she even get to post it? Took 6 hours to pick her off the landing. If I die tomorrow, sure, say some prayers. Although I prefer poetry, toasts and tales, and yes, a little karaoke. My dog would lie on my side of the bed waiting for me to pet her. I know at least my daughter would cry. She always cried when sending me off at the airport. I know my husband would tell jokes. And my son would smoke weed all day and hide his grief in the fog. Thank you. And then this last piece, it's short and it's not published yet. It's a response to the violence against Asian Americans that happened, that's been going on. And so we did a workshop and we responded to the words, go back where you came from, because that's what, a lot of Asian people have been hearing since this whole pandemic started. Well, I think it's just exacerbated by the pandemic, but it's been going on for a while. So this piece is called Go Back Where You Came From. I came from my father's clavicle and my mother's pubic symphysis. Before that, I lived in my grandmother's wish and a curse my grandfather spat when my mother came home, heavy with sin. I came from places you can't even imagine, where stars fall in the water in the quiet of night, and the moon is not afraid to be seen with the sun. A place where the sky is red with murder at dawn and seabirds swoop down for dinner at dusk. Do you want to go there with me? Come, fear not. I'll massage your mandible till you relax and open your jaws wide, 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 so I can fall, 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 fall into where you came from. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Lenny. That was wonderful. Please come again. Before we go on with the open mic, I just want to acknowledge all those watching on YouTube, on the YouTube stream. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And we will continue now. So next up is
Actually,
Leonard Lund.
Al, can I interrupt you and
Sure.
ask you to do a commercial for contributing to the hat we can't pass?
I can do that. I just posted it on YouTube and posted it earlier on our Zoom. Yes, we've always had a tradition of passing the hat for our featured reader or readers, and of course, all the proceeds go to them because we think people deserve to earn a little bit with their poetry. So there's a link on the YouTube chat and a link in our Zoom chat for donations through PayPal, and you can use a credit card or your PayPal account, whichever. But we appreciate that, and our features appreciate that. So back to the open mic. Next up, I'd like to ask Leonard Lund to share some poetry.
I'll be glad to. One of the advantages, one of many advantages to being retired from the day job sort of world is that this is my second open mic of 5 this week. And they really are out there if you've got the time for them. Most of them are actually in the evening, but I'm lucky enough to get to some that happen during the afternoon all over the world. Okay, 3 ekphrastic pieces. One of the other things about being retired is the world is a much quieter place. I find myself drawn to art or photography for inspiration for poems that probably would have been part of my daily life once upon a time. Little Billy's gone missing from his house down the block, but no one's too worried just yet. It's only been a day, and the neighborhood's always been safe. Probably slept at a friend's house after staying out too late. Didn't call to say, and now he's scared he'll get yelled at. Doesn't realize how much his parents miss him. He'll come back. Not that it's the first time. When his grandpa was Billy's age, he tried to run away from the civil defense drills at school, from the Russians in Moscow and the Reds in Hollywood, a few hours north on the coastal highway. And William Jr. hid too, when he overheard his father's talk of being a soldier in Vietnam, saw the pain behind the words that stayed hidden. They both came back the next day, or mostly back anyway. But I'm not so sure this time. I heard Billy say he was going home as he put on his foil and cardboard spacesuit, fastened a shiny square helmet, turned the power control on his chest. I saw him run down the gravel road, faster and faster, his feet kicking up dust like rocket smoke every time he jumped and stretched for the sky. And then he was gone from sight. Colorizing The Wise Child in the Playground, a 1954 photograph by Robert Doisneau. She's the only child with glasses, frames bright silver under a cloud-filtered sky. The lenses slightly magnify eyes of the deepest brown. Eyes a young man 15 years from now will gratefully drown in. Her wool dress is a heather green plaid with slighter green collar and cuffs. She's the only one clutching anything, a scuffed red leather valise not meant for a child's hands. It matches her sandals. One boy has a messenger bag slung across his chest, but it doesn't interfere with doing anything. Her hair is not the only or lightest shortcut blonde. She's not the only one with legs still summer tanned more than hands or face. Not the longest or shortest shadow, girl or boy. Hers is the one cheek that shows a deep red spot of shame or sadness. She's the only one with pale mouth closed, the only one not bright-eyed, laughing and playing. She's 7 or 8 here, nearly 80 where we are. There's still much that she'll be, still more that she's not going to be allowed. The walls are the tans of ancient concrete heavy on sand. Windows are dark blanks before the bell rings. And the firm schoolyard dirt is the many faded, splotched grays of memories no one else clasps in the middle of the night. Okay, this is after a uncredited photograph of the Monets. Claude and Alice feed pigeons in Venice. His suit and hat are well worn, though younger than the gray beard and fading black mustache. He could be an unseen clerk, a waiter, or an almsman fresh from a city's street corner. Do you remember, he asks, when I was not famous, when the salons and galleries refused me? The strain of travel marks her coat and skirt, but the ruffled white blouse has stood its ground as a matter of pride. She commands a wealthy matron's attention without intention. And do you remember, she replies, when I was beautiful and refusing suitors? His heart speaks without hesitation. You are still the fairest of them all. And had you refused me, well, I can't envision who I would be. Her heart, as quickly honest, returns, you have always been famous to me. Thank you.
I am so enjoying and have been enjoying this open mic. We have such wonderful open mics, and it's also really nice when we get to see old friends, but also new ones or those we don't see often enough. We're going to wrap up this open mic with MCETs. Did I do it right?
That's all right. Thank you for trying. Awesome. So first of all, very, very grateful to be here. And I found out when this began that Virginia wasn't coming, and I really wish that she was, but I'm sure that is shared. So I'll get this started. I have a couple of short poems, and then maybe one backup if we still have time for it. Alrighty. So the first one I wrote for Michelangelo's David. It's my take on the Petrarchan sonnet. Oblige the rest, my calling angel's child. Other magnum opossums digging through scraps of themselves, fearing masters riled. Too perfect for piety, is it true? Taller than the giant you slung asleep while squinting at the high sun eyes hollow. Pigs mailed in loose translations from old sheep, no imperial could dare seek follow. I cut my teeth on stone tasting skin deep, your jugular erect, mercy shallow. If I cannot become a tree to reap, use and return my lost marble shadow. Daft me, to you, I know I am ugly. Perfect. Now the second one. This one is one that I think Virginia likes, so I would like to read it for her as well. Ovid, Kafka. Like the metaphor, you are tired. Wore out your skin, then tried to sew it to the soles of your feet in order to recognize your shadow. Caterpillars are surrounded by stories of colorful wings. You worry what yours should look like, become sick with hope. Hummingbirds spit nectar and help prepare you for flight, forget they have always had their wings. Questions float from you into the world, potent pollen into open fields. Everything emerges from nothing. How do you create new words? You have every letter ready. You are simply rearranging. Thank you. And let's do this one and then see how it goes. So this one I wrote for another person who couldn't be here. She has an exam, otherwise she would be watching this. This is a birthday litany I wrote for for one of my best friends, Julia. Midnight snacks. Call us a slow burning pair, for only after sharing the same air could we learn to breathe together, looking out and for each other. And woman, I have to say, you're no swamp witch or mischievous fae. So gremlin, I wish you a happy birthday. Of course, only Dorian's bait could determine a friendship's fate of bitch and night of drink paired with crying in the sink, as you wished me while the dirt washed away. You're no match for a melting witch of clay. So gremlin, I wish you a happy birthday. Final verse, I'm getting lazy with my rhymes, but I pray you'll know that I'll miss our pathetic times. Our era is nearing the end. Thank you endlessly for becoming my friend. It is evident you prefer a stray from the witch that parties every weekday. Gremlin, I wish you a happy birthday. Thank you. I'm gonna relinquish here, but thank you for having me once again, and I can't wait to hear the rest.
Okay.
I hope we'll see you again. Perhaps when we get Virginia back on the schedule. Before we have Darius's feature, I want to say that tentatively January will have the former Illinois Poet Laureate Kevin Stein with us. He has not had time until now. I guess I ran into him yesterday at a memorial service for Fifth Wednesday. And in addition, Janice Harrington, who is at U of I at Champaign. So that's that. Al, anything on your side?
No special announcements or anything. I just want to thank all our open micers. That was a great open mic. Really appreciate it. And now I'm anxious to hear Darius's work.
All right. So Darius, are you with us? Hi there. Good. You ready? All right. So I'm going to read you Darius's bio, and then I am going to read you something that the more impressive accolades from the Poetry Foundation website. So from Darius, he's a writer, educator, performer, and skilled living room dancer. You're in your living room, right? Do we get a do we
Nah,
get
just,
okay.
just the words tonight.
Yeah. And he's from Akron, Ohio. Much like the means of production, he believes poetry belongs to and with the masses. He aims to inspire those chills that make you frown and slightly twist up your face in approval. Darius believes in the dissolution of empire and the total liberation of Africans and all oppressed people by any means available. Free the people, free the land, free all political prisoners, something that needs to be said. Now, I get lucky about finding people that I don't know, or almost don't know, so that I can invite them. And the way I encountered Darius Simpson's poetry is when I was judging the annual contest for the New Ohio Review. And apparently I was not the only one or that placed his poetry first, because the points added up, and he won. He also happened to become a recipient of the Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation, and hopefully that'll be good for a few poems and or your next collection. His first collection is Conversion Theory, out of 20 that got published in 2018. He got his BA in political science from Eastern Michigan University and is a candidate for the MFA in creative writing poetry from Mills College. He's appeared in Adroit, American Poetry Review, I was going to say Crab Cake Review, which is not what it is, but I was tempted. Crab Creek Review, and elsewhere. He serves as a teaching artist, working with middle and high school students throughout Oakland and San Francisco. And I really am looking forward to hearing you tonight. Darius Simpson.
Right on. Thank you. Can y'all hear me? Yeah, okay, I see some nodding for sure. Some objective facts. Banana is a terrible artificial flavor. It's okay to shoot back at cops. I'm not an advocate for violence, but for peace. Violence is houseless evictions during fire season. Violence is the terms houseless eviction and food waste. Violence is 8-figure budgets for cop unions. You have to say it 3 times before it sticks. Whoever invented banana flavoring hates us. Banana flavor tastes nothing like bananas. Annually, US companies discard literal tons of food. When I say it's okay to shoot back, maybe I mean necessary. Maybe I mean we've tried everything else. Maybe it's time we buck up and buck back. There are enough structures to house every human. Captain Planet has beef with the US military. A few people have decided the color of the sky. Even less have decided the flavor of the ocean. Schools are closing due to poison water fountains. Prisons remain open despite hurricane evacuations. Prisons remain open despite smoke in the vents. Prisons remain open despite an airborne pandemic. Public schools close in the Midwest when it's too cold. New prisons generate revenue for downtown suits. New schools don't produce free labor forces. A student asks too many questions of the whip. A prisoner can't call home for a guardian. With history books like this, who needs a pledge? If you do the math, you end up on a watch list. If you do the math, you become a flight risk. If you do the math, you find a gun in your hand. Kwame Ture is my favorite poet. If we love our people, we'll organize. If we are tired of this shit, we'll organize. If we want uncontaminated oxygen, we'll organize. My parents want a revolution, but not a revolutionary son. Obama was the most effective war criminal to date. I'll trust a white revolutionary before a black overseer. What we believe is a result of our understanding of history. What we believe means very little if we don't act on it. What we believe might be what's keeping folks in chains. I believe in self-defense and liberated zones. I believe in above ground decolonization. I believe in avoiding enemy lines at all costs. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. The most important ballot of our lifetime. Again, just one more election, just one more vote, just one more win, just one more seat, just one more century. Just ignore the hunger pangs, just ignore the drone strikes, just remember the towers, just forget the chains. Just forget the prisoners. Just look away from the tense. Just hold on. Just keep on drowning. Just hold your breath. Just collapse quietly while hoping for change. Just pass away without interrupting the debate live stream. Just wait till next year. Just give it time. Just give up your first and last born. Just give up what's left after rent. Just give up. Just kidding. Just believe. Just not in revolution. Just look at me. Just keep marching. Just forget the last decade. So a quick confession. Yeah, I did it. Swallowed the box of cigarillos, vomited loose cigarettes on the sidewalk, sold the case of CDs, sat motionless in 4 a.m. couch drool, spread arms face down in backyard dirt, surrendering, told them I didn't do it, told them I couldn't breathe, told them I couldn't resist if I wanted to, hands, ankles, breath, shackled, both wrists, locked behind my head, throat back. I reached for the pistol, pulled a round nose bullet from backseat thin air, slaughtered myself while hog-tied. I was Houdini. Now, that butter knife on my waist was actually a samurai sword. I was a samurai. I was reaching for the zipper at the top of my spine. I was getting ready to unwrap layers of costume skin, reveal green patchworks of scaled flesh, ash breath lungs, Hulk-like demon blossoming on all of me, even behind the pointed ears. He lucky he shot, choked, tased first, cuz I was about to snap my neck open. See, I got this ill superpower where I can transform into a lie before it's told. He must have known that. That's why I'm a mess on the cement now. This cop cried wolf and got me instead. Already spinning lies from dust while my flesh spin whistles its way to the ground. I overheard him saying he had to do it. And he was right. If not for the gun, headlock, car smash, I would have fully developed horse limbs, bat-winged shoulder blades, grenade pins instead of teeth, poison-tipped lion tail curling in the wind, but he got the drop on me, so now I'm just lying there half shape-shifted, looking almost as weapon as he said I was, looking almost fairy tale enough to make it home. Pupils fluttering against closed eyelid canvas, my hardly lived life splattered crimson, my jaw blown off its hinges in front of me. Looked like I was about to say something, but an explosion took the mouth right out my mouth. Half the boy I was spilling onto a missed call screen, drowning in puddles of me scattered on the blacktop. The Black artist's role in America is to aid in the destruction of America as he knows it. Amiri Baraka. Tell my mama I'm up before 9 a.m., plotting escape from the empire again, gathering firewood for the Pentagon, practicing my slingshot stance, trying to topple puppet governments, trying to play dominoes with giants. I'm 2 decades late for therapy, 3rd generation off the plantation, got a bad habit of maroon conspiracies, got an attraction to new African landscapes. I got a mean 2-step for the after party. I tell the law nothing of substance, tell the people everything I can, tell no lies because it's raining pig tongues, claim no easy way out because back doors break too. It's a whole lot of textbook revolutionaries. It's a whole lot of part-time freedom fighters making full-time money off surviving the 60s. My father told me to keep my head down. I keep that in mind behind sandbag barricades. My poems don't mean shit if you don't see me. Outside is calling for a different kind of artist, one who knows the importance of spare mags, one who don't back down from defense, one who knows there is a time for canvas and a time to make political art out of a jawline. I recently moved And so right now, as it sits, I live just east of a contradiction. Clumps of knotted human hair skip excitedly over sidewalk cracks and pairs. Screeching tires scrape murals into over-patrolled crosswalk paint. City tremors and zip codes shaken loose from indigenous childhoods. Colonialism don't respect finders keepers. All's fair in genocide except self-defense. There are humans that are too familiar with the politics of thunderstorm forecasts. Squalor sitting next door to neighborhood-sized apartment buildings, half-empty baby bottles rolling over broken glass under the freeway, brand new cop cars taking victory laps around decade-old encampments, dead grass grappling with the distance between beating hearts, piles of repurposed couch cushions, and bench warrants covered in sewage. Climate crisis is confused by how many humans we let pile on the curb, while profits skyrocket for empty housing units. While a high-rise crawls out of the chapped lips of an investor. I'm not really sure how leasing works. I got my degree in human decency. I'm not really up on the latest ethics for ownership. All my comrades keep space on the couch and a spare blanket. Push the weight limits of a Honda Civic and there's always room. Wednesday is a good excuse to shoplift under capitalism. Yesterday was sufficient evidence to stack bricks near glass houses. 1970s criminal records are waiting for academics to put on work boots. I'm not sure what's legal and what's tradition anymore, but at some point, sick of this shit should lead us to get rid of city council, lest we be made of plastic promises too, lest the young have a bone to pick, lest that bone come from our inactive trigger fingers, lest there be no land left to pick a fight on. I blame the suffering last for how we survived the winter. I blame the governor for flooded highways and raining ash. I blame poverty on vegan diet commercials and yoga studios. I blame police for lead pipes and poison middle school history lessons. I blame police for all the mornings my father bit his tongue on the job. I blame police for my lazy eye twitch and my obsessive desire to produce. I blamed the sheriff's office last week when I stubbed my toe, and it left an iron star-shaped blood stain in my sock. Last summer, I was in Detroit, and Detroit pigs do what all pigs do. They murdered someone. And so there was an action that popped off for it. And so I went to the action. The person I was staying with in Detroit, they didn't go to the action, but when I got back, it had been raining and everything. And I just recently, so I've been doing this poem for a minute, like performing it and telling the story. And I just recently remembered, like last week, it was raining that night too. What a terrible way. I was like soaked from the action, and I came in, and the first thing this person that hadn't gone to the action said when I came in, because like it was the same day he had been murdered, the action happened. So we were all out in the streets and we were marching. We were getting like live updates, and so they would update over the loudspeaker when an update would come in, like releasing the footage, official statements, what exactly had happened, all that. So I got back. And the person I was staying with, the first thing they said was, he shot at the police, right? He might not have had his hands up. He was not up to date on his YMCA membership. He did not mentor at-risk teenagers after school. His license was suspended and his taillights shattered. He wasn't wearing a lick of white when they found him, had his pants sagging, had his shirt untucked, had his lips unbuckled, dripping southern twang all on the concrete. It sounded like a mouthful of honeybees was stuck at the top of his throat. He was black. Like black, like dark roast coffee beans black, like ashy knuckles cradling a bottle of wild Irish rose on the sidewalk black, like scarecrow perched just outside the liquor store doorway black, like purple tar gums and gold teeth, like paper bag hands and menthol breath, like empty Black and Milds wrappers in the glove compartment. I heard it wasn't even blood where they left him. I heard it was just stains of red Kool-Aid. I heard it was just puddles of strawberry pop fizz. Sugar would have got him if 12 didn't. His teeth were little yellowing daggers. He was a dragon. Return fire went out in a puff of smoke. You know he was a weapon, didn't beg for his life or call for his mother or his partner. You know that nigga went out on his feet, brought a gun to a gunfight, brought mutiny to a slave ship at the Atlantic shoreline. You know that nigga was a nigga. And not like, ha nigga, not like next Democratic presidential nominee, nigga, not like run fast, jump high, nigga, like worm food covered in tree bark, like lead water clogging an artery, like dead leaves stuck in a gutter, like storm the arsenal and shoot the masters. One of those give me liberty or give me blood types. That nigga had the nerve to want freedom and then go do something about it. And still, what y'all gonna march for him? What would Malcolm X's old zoot suit think? What would a white woman's rendition of Dr. King think? What would the noose say? What if they see us mourning and think we just as dangerous as him? What if I say liberation and they think I mean I hate America? What if I hate America, but don't know no other homeland? Shit, what if America hates me back and does something about it, but doesn't leave me time to shoot first? And so in the event of such an event, hypothetically, if I'm caught between a badge and a hard place 3 hours after the streetlights turn on, will you church it? Will you pass it along pews of almost saints until it reaches the whole congregation? Will you tithe it? Will you stretch it thin like goat skin over the shell of a djembe drum? Will you slap it? Will you let the echo dance naked in the wet cave of your throat? Will you bark it? Will you sing it like my mother is listening? Will you inhale until your lungs nearly burst, then inhale some more, then inhale some more, then and only then will you say my name? Will you put some stank on it? Will you juke joint James Brown it? Will you Jerry curl spray it? Now, how can I rest in peace or power if y'all get all lazy lipped when you talking about me? Will you scoop it thick? Will you stir it slow? Will you mac and cheese it? Will you to spread the savory over your tongue? Will you let it marinate? Will you serve it with Sunday dinner? Now, if you say my name and cast iron skillets don't start to rattling, that mean you ain't say it loud enough. Will you say it again? If an oak tree don't split open from the trunk, that mean you ain't pronounce it right. Will you say it again? Will you redecorate this city in streams of fire after me? Will you paint downtown a scorching hue? Will you stain the sky in black smoke? Will you tell ghost stories over the ashes of this empire? Will you scream it? Will you stand outside in the clutter of some rush hour traffic to let these motherfuckers know what kind of boots I wore? Will you stomp it into the soil of the last place where I laughed with my whole body? Will you dance it? Will you Saturday night praise it? Will you tambourine it? Will you drunken favorite song shout it? Will you full moon howl? Will you shriek? Will you moan? Will you chant? Will you live? Will you cry? Will you cry for me? Will you? Thank you.
Wow.
Well,
Darius-
damn,
Wow.
damn, Darius.
Left us speechless.
Do you want to do an encore for us? Or are you exhausted?
I could do one or two more.
Sure, it'd be great. You're muted.
I was pulling up another document, sorry. We don't die. We second line trumpet groove through gridlock streets. We home go in charcoal black Cadillacs stretched around corners. We wake up sharp and Sunday best, stiff but beaming. We move the sky. We escape route starshine. We crescent moon conspiracy. We come alive in the closed palms of midnight. We electrify. We pass due bill, but full belly. We fridge empty. We pocket lent payments. We make ends into extensions. We multiply. We claim cousins as protection. We so-and-so plus and them. We extend family to belong to someone. We siblings because we gotta be. We chicken fry. We greased kitchen. We hog neck greens. We scrape together recipes from scraps. We prophesy. We told you so, even if we never told you nothing. We omniscient, except in our own business. We swallow nations' anthems and spit them out sweet. Make them sound like red velvet ain't just chocolate with a little dye in it. We bend lies. We amplify. We laugh so hard it hurts. We hurt so quiet we dance. We stay fly. We float on tracks. We glide across linoleum like ice. We make it look like butter. We melt like candle wax in the warmth of Saturday night liquor sweat. We don't die. We dust that colonies couldn't settle. We saltwater city built from runaway skeletons. We organize. We Oakland in 66. We Attica in 71. We Ferguson before and after the camera crews. We bow but don't break. We break but don't crumble. We won't die. We won't die. We won't die. We won't die. We won't. So as was stated, I'm a teaching artist, which is not something that I knew was a job until I moved to the Bay. And so, yep. So that's what I do. I teach art. And so I go into classrooms. We write poems, do performances, editing, all of that. And so this is inspired by one of those classes. 72 hours after we've confirmed the rumors, one of my students interrupts morning check-ins to explain that the rapper who we are sure is buried by now is actually still alive. He said, nah, he posted last night that it was a prank with Tupac conspiracy conviction. Said the rapper shook brittle earth from around worm-bitten shoulders. Orange prescription bottle full of dandelion seeds holstered like a pistol. Hairline replaced by a crown of canary gold Cuban link chains, scalp nestled with bundles of copper. And he did not knock on his mother's door or approach the hot-boxed windshield of the boys who carried him to his unfinal rest, or check into a hospital to verify his heart was in fact producing original music. Instead, this lukewarm-blooded boy scrambled for the nearest cell phone to send a tweet that this and only this student was paying close enough attention to catch. You thought he wasn't going to remix his own life? Ha ha. Thought he wasn't God of comebacks? Ha ha. He never left? Ha ha. Maybe my brother didn't leave either? Ha. It was all a joke, right? He looked to me for confirmation of this truth that is only true in the calloused palms of architects, creative enough to observe a blank page and see open earth or unsculpted clay, or a distant town where Black boys don't have to expire or kill to become headlines, halo-worthy, Hollywood soil worth saving, a world where Mike does his time in jail and comes home without a pine box, where bullets fly straight through my uncle without tearing flesh, where diabetes is not an anchor in Brandon's bloodstream, where Tyran is ended in one instant and dancing on a table in the next. I think this student was trying to convince me that Jesus was a mud-brown child on earth once who didn't know how to leave the party. I think he was asking for a fabled existence where Black boys live past 33 on weekends. Me, being as halfway holy as I am, I do not push the final nail in this voice wedged between the lid lips of a Black boy's coffin. I do not stifle the belief that death is a hoax and you might just escape if someone somewhere around 9 a.m. on a Tuesday is brave enough to say your name 3 times in a writing prompt. I do not crush the boy looking to me to corroborate this story that is absolutely false. so that he might go down in yearbook history as the necromancer that saved hip hop. I do not demand he fold the rapper's name neatly into the back of his throat, because in 6th grade, Mr. Suber passed me a copy of Usher's Confessions album and told me I had wings, and I believed him, and sometimes I still do. Standardized school almost tested the poet out of me. Now I wrestle impossible before class starts. As timed free writes end, I quiet the music. Students know this means soon aluminum doors will yield correctional ink and graded obedience. But in here, all you need is a piece of paper, a pencil, and the confidence to say that shit with your chest, and voila, the funeral was a practical joke. We laughed so hard, we died. Thank y'all.
Wow. Thank you. Very powerful. Very.
So are you ready for the Q&A? As I listen to you, I think you must be exhausted, but then you're also younger than I am. So other people, feel free to jump in with my questions. I have maybe two main ones, and one of them is about page and stage, but the other is about how you think about political poetry, what you're trying to achieve, but also I'm sure you've read and heard what people say about how political poetry should be written. And I'm wondering what your understanding of that is, and how what you do weighs out or plays out in that context. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, did you say, it started breaking up, did you say how political poetry shouldn't be written?
Should.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you know what I mean? There are some people who say, this is how poetry, political poetry should be written. It should not be talking at people. I don't think that should be a rule, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
For sure. So it sounds like you're pointing to a different this. I don't know if I know what the this is, but
well, this is, how people, I think people say something like, and help me out, audience here, but how it's like you should be telling a story that evokes from people what the direction you may want, so they come to the conclusions at the same time, but more through anecdote.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. For sure. So I guess I could say I'm of the school of thought that all poems are political poems. There is that. So funny story, because I'm reminded of it being here. Like a year ago, I was doing 2 readings in the same week. Readings are new to me. I finally got my MFA, so that bio was from last year, but I was in the MFA program, and that was my first time going to a reading. I come from slam and spoken word, mostly Black spaces, and whether it was slam or spoken word, and those are just very different than readings, quote unquote. I don't know any video I've either been to Black poetry spaces or been to slams. And so I in general, just energetically, I just struggle to be in this kind of space because it's very much more reserved in a lot of ways, at least in person, especially online. So a year ago, I had 2 of those back to back in the same week. And there was a person that read a poem, and there was a white person, and they said that this was their first political poem. This is 2020. They had to be they were 20 something. And so I had like a visceral reaction, like, what do you mean this is your first political poem? Like you're a poet, you've been writing, And so it was pointing back to all that, all those poems that you were writing before, where you were turning away from politics, or you believed that politics weren't present in them, or in your poems, in your writing, those too were political. To be, or to believe, or to assert, or to seek after an apolitical existence, a practice, or creation is a political act, and it's of a very particular trajectory and history and tradition. And so, yeah, to say that all poems are political, and so we're participating in something. Empire, the United States government utilizes media, utilizes poems, as we see with the creation of the Iowa Writers Workshop, as we see with the funding of cop shows, the propaganda, putting however much money into the movies that create human sides of non-human actors in the state violence. They use art too. And so at all times, either this art is being utilized for revolutionary means, revolutionary purposes for the people, which is to enlighten folks to our condition and better prepare folks to engage in revolution, or it's a Band-Aid, it's a feel-good process to make us feel better about existing inside of a genocidal state. And we get to decide what to do with it. And when it is, we have to be honest about what that is. So I don't know the people that say political poems should do this way, because I don't come from that. I don't come from folks that think about poems that much. That's very institutional to think about how much we write and like what the poem itself is doing. Because I come from folks that were doing the thing, right? We were on the stage delivering it, right? And so we didn't spend a lot of time really. The word that comes to mind is pontificating, because that's what it felt like. We were just sitting there talking in circles about poems, and just like, there are hungry people outside, and none of these words that we're saying are aiding in any of that. So anyway, I'll just say all poems, all writing is political. Where I stand with it, and where I'm at right now, is that I don't read a lot of poems that just say the thing. What I have read is I think of Daniel Brzezinski's The Performance of Being Human. I think about so that's one example of what I've seen, which is like, right, there's so much politics in this, but if I don't know certain words, if I don't know certain histories and traditions, then these poems don't mean very much to me. And so what I'm trying to get at here is like my politic and my direction in its basest form. And so, you can pick up this poem with no context and still understand the United States is your enemy, or at least understand that that's what I'm getting at. And I think that, yeah, I don't know. I think there's something in poetry that is sacrifice, but it's like, who are we writing to, and who are we writing for? Because we write these beautiful poems that only other poets really can appreciate or understand as political, or folks who have read enough books to know that this is an ekphrastic poem, ekphrastic, such a funny word, poem of this particular art, and that's super political because this person did and said this, and you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't know those things, then it doesn't really get at it. So like what I'm trying to get at, particularly in the way I'm writing now, it probably does sound a little more heavy-handed, a little more prosy, but yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Well, does anybody?
This?
Oh, right. That's an early.
Oh, wait. Could you put that up again? I missed it. Sorry. Of becoming human. Okay, cool. Thanks.
And this one may be his most recent. Can you see that, Darius?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see this one? This was written after a massacre in the year 2018. That's also by Danny Brzezinski, who was actually a Chicagoan, or at least when I read, whatever, 15 years ago, he was teaching at Wright College. So yeah, he's one of ours.
Shout out to the Midwest.
Yeah,
indeed. Where are you, Darius?
I live in Oakland, California.
I thought that's what you said. Oh, great. I wonder if my little nephews will run across you when they get a little bigger. Are you teaching at college or high school level, or what? Or
I do like one-off workshops at colleges, but I teach high school and middle school with organizations.
Cool. Excellent. I don't know. Nobody would mistake the politics in your poetry. That's all I can say. And nobody would mistake it for prose. I don't think. It's just fabulous.
I like how it starts with kind of a story or a prose. Like I thought you were like telling the story, and then it just moves so smoothly into like verse, and I was just like blown away by that. So thank you so much.
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, I appreciated that too. That it's the poems themselves seem to push out of the boundaries of the little square box for a poem, and seem to both have this conversational feel that all of a sudden pulls you into these incredible anaphoras, these repetitions that build higher and higher. And so my one question for you would be, what do you do then to take some of that power and then put it back into the page when you're going to give it up to somebody else? Because it can be tricky, especially when you use some of the things that you do, like a lot of your stuff, the voice changes in the poem, right? Sometimes you're writing on one end, and sometimes you're mocking some stereotypes from the other end. And so how do you make sure you put that voice back onto the page?
Yeah, I think that there is, the extreme answer is that it's impossible. And so, I will never pass a poem to someone unless they know me. And I've like spent a lot of time talking about poems with me, and I've seen me perform them and have them really read it how it would sound if I did it. And so I think that's one thing. Some stuff to play with is like placement of things on the page, italics, brackets. So that there, in a couple of those pieces, there are brackets, which do a different thing that I can't do vocally. It's like it's just a different experience. And so there isn't really a, how do you transfer this? I was talking to a friend, we started like our whole page process together, really last spring, really trying to like get deep into like what submitting poems looks like and like what this whole institutional poetry world is like. And that was a question. It was like, so like she had a whole host of poems that she had been performing, and then the question initially, I think it was something like, how do I translate this? It's like, well, you don't. But now you ask the question of what tools do you have on the page that you don't have on the stage? And like, you have this poem, you have this piece, and what things can you turn up, turn down, remix that aren't possible? And so I think there's just a different set of tools on the page than there is on the stage, and it gets to be two different experiences where like, yep, I'm gonna read this and you're gonna have a particular experience. And if you've heard it, of course, when you go back to the read it, you'll hear it in my voice, possibly. But besides that, it's like it's a whole other world.
Well, I don't think we need to drop this discussion or the conversation about political poetry, but one of the other things in my mind is, the movement from or back and forth between page and stage is how, we put it. And Tyimba, who is also a Chicagoan, originally from Detroit, has read for us. And he started off, before he went back to grad school, a lot of times on the stages of Green Mill, et cetera, performance poet, which you can still see in his readings. And then he went back to school at NYU. And what's his name? Philip Levine gave him all kinds of shit. At least that's what he told me when I was in New York, for not writing the way Phil Levine wrote. And he showed Phil Levine. But that's, he's a real good example among a number of good examples of people who started out as part of the slam world and then got some schooling, and who knows how much it changed their writing to have both things going on. But, I'd be really interested in hearing your own experience of that. I mean, my God, Poetry Foundation gave you an award, and they don't generally do that for people who are just performance poets.
I mean, so first, I'm sorry. Oh man, as is evident from my reaction here, I have no poker face often. So that was a real time reaction to you said they don't usually do that for just performance poets. And I think I think there's a lot there in that sentence, right? When we think of performance, when I say slam and then I say institution, I say slam and then I say award, there's in all of our minds, there's some sort of confirmation, some sort of legitimization that happens. Like, oh, you started off there and then you went to real poems, you know, then you went to real, you know,
Right.
real poetry spaces. And like, that's horseshit, right? I have zero idea why they gave me this award. There was no rubric. There was no, you know, it wasn't, I was in my program, but I hadn't really released any poetry or started submitting it into the world yet. So I have no idea why I got this. And there was no conversation after. And that's the nature of all these things, right? These folks that have amassed crazy amounts of money to be giving away fucking 6-figure, them, that's like 7 and 8 figure because they give away other awards, but that's a different conversation. Yeah, so like, I am super grateful to have gotten the money, to have that on my name. Of course, people are like, oh, Ruth Lilly, huh? And also, what does it mean? I'm still writing the same poems and the same poet. Nothing happened. I didn't get a fancy jacket, you know, no lapel pin, no secret handshake. I'm still the same. My material conditions remain the same. And more importantly, the material conditions of Africans and political prisoners and Black folks in this country remain the same. And so, you know, yeah. And so like, that's a political side. And to think about, like, they don't do that just for, and I'm not to pick on you, but what you said really, it does point to how we think about poems, right? You're not the only person that thinks that way. And so when I point back to what you said, I'm not coming at you specifically, but the idea of, you know, they don't give that to just performance points. Why not? Because they also don't tell you why they might do otherwise. And they did. I was just a performance poet at the time, and still am. But yeah, I want us to all think about that too. Like, what does it mean for someone to be just a performance poet, or, you know, what assumptions am I making about a person when I hear slam? Anyway, and so my experience in institution has been very specific, as I can tell. I tend to be very vocal about my opinions, and so especially in white institutions or capitalist and imperialist, you know, elitist institutions. And so like going in there, it's very much like you're assumed to know things because you got in. And so I was confused, like, wait, I don't know any of y'all. I don't know the language. I don't know, you know, I didn't do literature in undergrad. And so I came in to folks that had some sort of English background or literature background. I'm like, yeah, I was doing slam, writing spoken word poems. And, you know, that's amazing. And there's a science and a craft and an expertise to that. But this is not that. And so anyway, it was really uncomfortable at first. I told my first supervisor, like, yeah, I don't belong here. This is not, yep. I don't know why I'm here, why I got here, but I'm gonna head out. And they're like, no, you should stay. So I stayed through the program, and eventually it got a little easier to exist inside of it, but remain critical of it. One of my favorite professors, also a dear friend, Tongo Isaac Martin, one of our first classes, he was like, yeah, we're here because I went to Mills College, is a private school, and it's in East Oakland. And one of the first questions was like, you know, why are we doing poems here and not out in East Oakland, you know, not where folks are using military grade weapons that are on the street, you know. It's an important question for all of us here when we write poems and thinking about politics. Why here? Why not just performance poems? What is on the other side? And what does it cost to get to the other side? And who do we become? You know, who do I become when I get the award or when I get the, I don't know, the MFA? No, I'm the highbrow poet.
I was going to say you're the hybrid poet.
I see you, poet. All right. But yeah, so the experience has been interesting. I learned a lot about just the craft of writing on the page. I'm super grateful for that. And yeah, just learned about like what people are saying in these ivory towers in terms of literature and poems and writing.
Well, my thought is that it has changed. What people are saying has changed, because the Poetry Foundation would never feature the work of performance poets until maybe other people can disagree or whatever, maybe 15 years ago. It just didn't happen. But I think it's because enough poets like Tayimba or Tara Betts went to grad school and got their masters or their PhDs, that the Ivy Tower started to view a certain style of poetry differently, and it gave credibility that the Ivory Tower didn't have or wasn't open to before say 15 years
Which is
ago.
kind of funny because it's the way that we encounter poetry. When I was young, Deaf Poetry Jam was one of my first times in which I encountered poets where I was watching them because I wasn't like seeing them on the page. And so I was like, contemporary poets, that's what they're doing. And then when I would go to try to find them in readings, they weren't there. And you're right, Darius. It's almost like there was a world built up by spoken word that somehow wasn't being recognized, like on either side. I think some of the work that happens in Chicago, though, is that some of these circles can't unbind because some of the people who are in Chicago readings are doing performance all the time. So I think that one is strictly unique. But even when I'm working with other writers, it's hard to make a reference to like a well-known spoken word artist and have that be the person. They're still talking about contemporary or modernist poetry, which is like 120 years old. So.
Yeah, I think both Nina and what's her name? Pablo. Y'all both spoke to something about recognition and like a turning tide. I think it's important to note that oppressive structures will always open up, right? Will always co-opt and will always change. And that change can never be seen as progress, right? Because we know what it means to be inside the thing. And so like we stand outside and weren't legitimized. The trouble isn't that we weren't legitimized, it's that we don't have the resources because we're not legitimized. It's that we don't have access to, better, more sustainable institutions or publishing because we're not legitimized. The legitimacy isn't the thing that we're after, right? And it's important to note that still, no matter how many of us make it in, no matter how much it changes, it still serves the same function. And so, that's neocolonialism. Eventually, we had to have Black cops and had to have a Black president, had to have Black politicians, because if not, this whole thing would have burned down. And so in order for this oppressive structure to sustain itself, it had to do what they do. And so like, yes, things have changed. And, what has really changed, what has changed really look like in a positive way. And it would look like the deconstruction of the wall, free education really for all. The delegitimization of these awards and things.
I have a question that is kind of long-winded, and you do not have to answer it, Darius, but I am very curious. So when we think about political poetry, or poetry essentially being political to your existence, and that is true for many groups and many identities, and in such a writing of necessary poetry, so poetry that is essential to your survival, to your peace of mind, to your understanding of the truth and history and how the world works, and expressing that and performing it for other people so that they can feel your pain in your existence, that you will not, go quietly, quite literally speaking. And in that sense, do you have a ritual? I ask this to almost everybody that I find has a very particular way of performing and a way of reading. Do you have a ritual to take care of yourself before or after you perform? Because what you do is very powerful, and it's something that I would compare to, very micro traumatizing yourself every time you do it. So do you have a way of kind of relieving that from yourself before or after you perform or write?
Yeah. I think for me, I'm in a transition of performance coming up in spoken word and slam. There was a lot of care for how I wanted something to perform, because it was important to know, at this point, the audience laughs. At this point, the audience is impacted by the contrast and the higher volume and lower volume. And so through this program, particularly in Tango's classes, there was a moment where it was like, yeah, you got to reset, because what you're actually doing when you have this repeated poem that you scripted out and you continue to perform it in that same way, and at this point I'm going to pause. At this point I'm going to move my eyebrow up to the left. I'm going to make this face. What you're doing is sucking the life out of the poem. Essentially, this isn't his words, but I'm like paraphrasing. So it was like, yeah. So like, what if you had a relationship to the poem and like let it have its own legs and its own life? And since performing poems in that way, performing is a lot less draining, because before it was like, it's going to be this amount of energy, no matter what, no matter how much you have to offer, this is where you have to go with it. And if you can't hit those heights and hit those lows and do it in that way, then actually even the performance suffers, because you were tired. And so like you did, 3 to 4 things differently than how you scripted it. But instead, if you go up there and you have a relationship to the piece and, go on a journey, which is something I'm still in the practice of, and I don't really know what it looks like, how it feels, but I know that afterwards I don't feel as drained, because I'm not really not really throwing the poem to folks. So I'm here performing, but I'm also really just trying to build a relationship to the words and the poem on its own. And it's a lot less weight on me. So that's something that is a care before and after. Just in thinking about how I present the thing when I'm practicing the poem, even it is harder, right? It's harder. It is tougher to both memorize and perform a poem that way, because I'm not guarded by by that predictability and that repetition. So there's a vulnerability, which is, if you had asked me before I started trying this out, which is before Tango suggested this edit, I'd be like, no, that sounds terribly disarming and vulnerable and draining, but it's all those things, but not draining in a surprising way. So yeah, I feel like I'm like, I go off and then I land at the end of the piece, or I'm back in my body in a lot of ways by the end, as opposed to trying to lift up the audience to some other height, some other place, and then having them try to come back down. So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
When I think about the
Real
different
quick,
people,
Nina, I'm sorry, real quick. Patricia, is your hand up? Has your hand been up for a minute?
Yeah, it has.
sorry, I didn't see it. Oh,
So what you said just now, really, just in answer to your question, it made perfect sense to me. That I think what I'm getting is performance has to be organic. It can't be, like although Ferlinghetti used to put on hats and stuff, and that was kind of cool, but you can't like make it into something that isn't heartfelt.
Well, it's not even, real quick, I'm sorry. It's not even like this is the right and wrong. I'm just saying, like, for me, it's two different experiences. So there's utility for having a predictability. Like, if you're doing slams, it's important for you to know, like I said, how it's going to play, how the audience is going to react. Like, that's super important. So it's not so much like you can't do that anymore. It's just like that has its place and its time and its impact. And this is what, this also has its impact. Sorry.
Well, I guess so. I'm not actually a slam poet. I'm not a performance poet. I wouldn't say that in any way. Okay, so my real question, what was my real question? So what do we do about the fact that the more we write, for all the words that we write and say, things don't change? Do you think that writing and delivering poetry is a political act that can create change, or is there a divorce between the word and the effect, the economic effect, the political effect, the legal effect, legislative effect?
Word. I'm gonna put it.
Okay, I'm a lawyer, so I have to use some words. I'm sorry.
It's good. There's a white poet from Cleveland, or who's based in Cleveland, named Brendan Joyce, and he wrote a book called Love and Solidarity. I was rereading it today, or flipping through my highlights, not rereading it. And it had me thinking about this question, just like, what is the utility of poems in terms of political? I'm sitting with the question because you're like, it's a political act. I was like, well, all actions are political, but I dig it. Like, what is the poem's place in terms of creating change? And like, I think it's important to name the limits. I wonder.
And is there something beyond being bodies, being embodied living beings that makes it necessary, that makes poetry have an effect? Or is it just, is all we can really do something like marching and writing letters and stuff like that?
Nah, the only thing we can do is be revolutionaries. That is quite literally the bare minimum of anything. And so the poem is a utility in as far as we are seeking to live revolutionary lifestyles, which means that we have to have a goal besides change, which means we have to hope, which means we have to know, what it has to look like to organize. I recommended that book because it's a book that lays out who the enemies are. And I think that's super important. Liberalism says that we are all in this together. And that's not true. It's just not true. I'm not in the same boat as a cop, because I can't be. One is the oppressor. An oppressor and the oppressed are not in the same boat. And so Democrats, state functions and processes will say that we must come together as America, but consistently pushes out and relegates Americanism to a particular group. And so there's a contradiction inside of that. So to the question of poems and like who we are, the basis thing that we could do is be revolutionaries, which means that we have to have a goal that extends beyond and after the United States of America as a settler colony, period. If we can't get to that as a base understanding, then we can never get to anti-imperialist. We can't get to anti-capitalist. We can't get to anti-colonial, because we don't understand our reality as it stands. And so that's it. And so if we're revolutionary, then the poem is propaganda, and the poem is as useful as any other piece of writing, any other piece of art. Thinking about Emory Douglas with the Black Panther Party, those images that were created were only as useful as the political action and the politic behind them, and the organization. And so, yeah. Thank
you. That's fabulous. Great answer.
Yeah. Last thing is that we have to stop thinking that the poem is the action. It's not. It's just a poem, and it reflects a very particular thing, but it is not an act. There are folks that I've said this a couple of times. Folks like, but what about people who are jailed for their words? Okay, cool. That's not here in the United States. We have to think about our what is our condition and where we are. And sure, we might get to a place where, we are leaning towards more authoritarianism as we get closer to revolution, and sides need to become more clear, where people are jailed for their poems and all that. And still, the poem is not the act, and the people who are jailed for their poems, it's not that just that they were poets. It's rather what they were pushing for in that poetry. And so we have to ask ourselves, if we're writing a political poem where we think our poem is action, what are we pushing for? What are we asking for? Are we asking for a general sense of love and kindness among people? And who are we talking to? That's all.
Okay, that's a great point. What you just said kind of put me into an understanding of context. I'm from a place where I can be jailed for what I write. I do not currently live there, but I do go home to visit, and I have roots there. So that is something that is very contextual for me. So you're absolutely right. The subject of what I'm trying to push, even if it should not be political, it can be processed as such. And by that logic, when we consider context and when we consider propaganda, aren't all poems propaganda of some sort? And this is just a musing of mine. They can be self-propaganda, personal propaganda, political propaganda, all depending on the context. Not all propaganda is seen, right?
Yeah, I think the thing about propaganda is intent. And so some folks write poems that are just poems. This is my reflection on whatever it is. And I think that there's an impact that is political. So I think all things all art being political is not to say that all art is propaganda necessarily. And so the state, when it funds SVU, and it creates these situations where you are feeling emotionally attached to a cop, that's a very particular goal attached to it in the propaganda. When Emory Douglas has pigs being, receiving the brunt end of the state violence that they actually dole out in real life, that's a very particular political goal or agenda in mind. And so I wouldn't say all things are propaganda, but I think that a poem like a brick, like a bullet, like a march can be either side. And so the state can have its marches too. And so we have to ask ourselves, what sets this aside besides our no justice, no peace signs? And I think what sets it apart, just like with what I was saying with propaganda, is the goal of the thing. What is the intention of which side am I really trying to play for? And have I chosen a side? Has our brick through a window chosen a side? Because the brick through a window on its own, that's not revolutionary, nor is it radical. To throw a brick through a cop's window, it's not, is what is revolutionary, what is radical is the politic behind it, the organization behind it, and what is the goal and what is it attached to, and what traditions and histories is it participating in? Does that make sense?
It strikes me that it's just about time to wrap up. So I just think this has been an amazingly energizing evening all through. And I'm just, besides listening to your poetry, Darius, this conversation I found really energizing, and in fact, I think that it is a good example of where the conversation, the reflection on, which you were saying earlier, is like not necessarily, doesn't necessarily accomplish much. And I also think there's the concrete work, poetry or no poetry, is more important than really anything else. But conversations like this can connect people's thinking or develop people's thinking. So yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry, can I throw one more thing in there? Or have I talked too much? Okay, because I know it can sound like I'm shitting on poems and poets and poetry, and that's not my goal. That's not it at all. I'm just very conscious of the limits of the poem and recognizing like we have to deplatform ourselves. Because I also came into poetry where it was like my word is the word of God, and I was like transcribing, and I believe, and I think a lot of ways, whether on the stage in like slam and spoken word or in the institution, we believe that about ourselves. There's an overimportance to it, and so like the goal is to make that less important, but not to diminish it, rather to prioritize, what are we doing? What is our action? You leave the poem and what are you doing? What are we doing to transform, our reality to a more human one, towards the revolutionary stages? But thank y'all for indulging me.
No, thank you. That was a powerful conversation. And I enjoy being able for us with this platform to create that conversation so that everybody can just talk about ideas and what's important. I mean, these kind of things we think about and we write about. And anyway, it was thank you for your outspokenness, Darius. That was great.
I think for those of you who have been here, once we do get the video of this up on YouTube, encourage people that you think ought to hear this conversation and the poetry to check in about it, because it lives both in the words and in the actions and in the conversations.
Yeah. So so the link for this conversation is on the Traveling Molly's channel on YouTube, and it's this same link that we had sent out earlier. So yeah, share it around, get it around. But we're we are up to our 2-hour mark here, Nina. So I do thank everyone for a fantastic night. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Bill, for doing the
Thank you.
machine
Thank you,
part.
Darius.
Thanks, Al and
Thanks
Nina.
so much.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Appreciate y'all. See you.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you all.